You walk into the room, you say nothing, no boast, no warning, no need, yet something shifts. People glance, pause mid-sentence, adjust their posture. They feel something, but they can't explain it. And they wonder, what is it about this person? That's the power of stillness. Not the stillness of absence, but the stillness of presence. The kind that hums with quiet confidence, with depth, with control. The kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full of restraint, full of purpose. Full of something they can't touch, and that's what makes them nervous. In a noisy world, silence is no longer neutral. It's provocative. Because most people are desperate to be seen, heard, validated. But when you choose silence, you choose mastery. And when you no longer react to the chaos, you become the one who commands it. This video is not about intimidation. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about becoming someone so grounded, so self-led, that your very presence becomes a message and your silence a mirror. One they can't look away from. So the question isn't, why are they shaken? The question is, what power lives in the quiet man? What has he seen? What has he endured that gave him the courage to say nothing? Let's walk into that mystery together. A world that fears the quiet. There is something ancient in the way silence unsettles people, like the stillness before a storm or the hush in a forest when a predator approaches. It's instinct. We fear what we can't read. We're unsettled by what we can't predict. And so, when you choose to be silent, not out of fear but out of control, you become unfamiliar to the world. Uncomfortable, undeniable, most people speak to fill the void. But a Stoic knows the void is sacred. In it, we gather power. In it, we listen to ourselves before speaking to the world. You don't owe anyone your plans. You don't owe the world your reactions. And when you stop giving them those things, they begin to tremble. Not because you've threatened them, but because you've become untouchable. The enemy, the critic, the manipulator, they thrive on response. Take that away and they are left to face themselves, and that is what shakes them. So today we're not here to shout louder. We're here to go deeper, to explore how silence, practiced as a philosophy, becomes a strategy, not to harm others, but to rise above them. To lead from within, to make peace your shield and presence your sword. And in that space between restraint and resolve, between calm and consequence, you will discover what Stoics have always known. That silence is not weakness, it is strength, distilled. Now let's begin. Part 1, the power of presence. And so, in the quiet after the question, why are they shaken? We begin to see the answer take shape, not in words, not in noise, but in something far older, something that speaks without sound, presence. Presence is not a costume, it is a consequence. You don't wear presence like a mask. You don't fake it with posture or pretend with practiced lines. Presence is the slow fire built deep inside. It is the weight of all you've endured, carried without complaint. It is the calm that comes from self-respect, from knowing your worth even when no one claps for you. And when a man walks with that kind of inner stillness, the world feels it, even before he opens his mouth. There once was a man who returned to his village after many years away. He had no banners, no followers, no title carved into stone, just a weathered face, steady hands, and eyes that didn't dart around looking for approval. He didn't explain where he had been. He didn't boast of what he had seen. He simply walked the same dirt path he once walked as a boy. And as he passed, the villagers fell silent. Not because he had changed, but because they had. They had grown used to loud men with empty words, to noise dressed as wisdom. But when this man returned, saying nothing, carrying no trophy, yet seeming more complete than any they'd known. They felt something shift. And they whispered, "What happened to him out there?" But the man said nothing, because presence does not explain itself. Marcus Aurelius knew this kind of presence. He ruled an empire, but rarely raised his voice. He stood on battlefields and in marble halls alike, calm as stone, because he understood true authority doesn't come from shouting. It comes from inner command. It comes from walking into chaos and not letting it shape you. Presence is the echo of restraint. When you do not react to every insult, when you do not rush to defend yourself, when you hold your peace even when others throw stones, that is when your silence becomes thunder. The Stoics believed the body should be trained, the mind sharpened, and the soul anchored, but not for the sake of impressing anyone, for the sake of becoming unshakable. So that when storms rise, when enemies scheme, when life breaks, you do not have to perform, you simply are, unmoved. Clear, ready, they fear you because you do not need them. They fear you because you do not explain, because you do not try to be liked. And that kind of presence, that quiet, disciplined stillness, is rare. Most men crave approval, but the man with presence has already approved of himself, and that terrifies those who still haven't. There is a strange truth in human nature. We are not drawn to the loudest voice. We are drawn to the one who doesn't speak unless it matters. We trust the man who listens more than he declares. We follow the one whose steps are rooted in principle, not performance. And when you embody that, when your energy speaks louder than your volume, you become a mirror to those around you. Some will respect it, some will envy it, some will try to break it. But none will ignore it. So cultivate presence, not to be feared, but to be free. Let your stillness be your protest. Let your discipline be your declaration. And let your silence be the soil where strength takes root. This is the beginning of power. Not the kind that dominates rooms, but the kind that does not need to. And in that space, you become untouchable. Let us walk deeper now into what it means to guard that stillness when the world tries to provoke you. Because where presence begins, provocation often follows. And what you do next reveals everything. Part 2. When life tries to provoke you. But of course, when your presence grows still, when your silence begins to speak louder than their shouting, the world does not stay quiet in return. No, it presses in. It pokes, it prods, it whispers and taunts. Because nothing unnerves the insecure more than a soul that cannot be rattled. They will test your silence. They will try to draw you out, not to understand you, but to undo you. They will say things meant to sting. They will invent false stories just to see if you'll react. And when you don't, they'll grow louder. They'll mock your calm. They'll call it weakness. But the Stoic knows true weakness is reacting to every itch, every insult, every whisper. True strength is stillness under fire. There's an old story of a stone cutter who lived near the mountain. He was plain, modest, and quiet. Every day he shaped rock with care, speaking little, disturbing no one. But the villagers, loud and curious, always asked him questions. Why do you live alone? Why don't you talk more? Why don't you come to the feasts? The stonecutter would only smile and say, I am building something, but he never said what. One day, a prideful man from the village, bothered by the stonecutter's calm, followed him up the hill and shouted, What are you hiding, old man? Are you afraid to speak, or too dull to know how? The stonecutter turned to him, eyes like river stone, and said nothing. Instead, he held up a small chisel, and in silence struck the side of a great boulder. A perfect corner broke away, clean and smooth. He handed it to the man and whispered, "It's not that I don't speak, it's just that I speak only when the shape is ready." That is the way of the Stoic. When life shouts in your face, when others insult, provoke, or try to stir your emotions, you do not react like a flame to wind. You hold fast like the stone. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The Stoics believed that your peace is your fortress. But it is only strong if you do not open the gate every time a stranger knocks. They will tempt you with argument. They will bait you with offense. But not because they want truth, because they want your fire. They want to see if they can make you burn. When you reply in anger, you hand them your flame. When you answer with desperation, you give them your center. But when you stay still, when you remain anchored, thoughtful, firm, you show them something they fear, a man who cannot be moved by the noise. This does not mean you suppress. It does not mean you deny that you feel. It means you direct your feelings inward first, like a potter shaping clay from within. You don't shout your truth at everyone. You speak it only when it is carved with clarity, and that makes your words heavy. It makes your voice matter. The wise do not explain themselves to the foolish, not because they think they are better, but because they know the truth is not for those who came to argue. It is for those who came to listen. In this world, you will be misread, you will be misunderstood. And you must let that be. You must let the rumors swirl like leaves in the wind while you walk your path, head clear, feet steady. Because if you chase every voice that calls your name, you'll leave your own name behind. But if you stay silent when they expect your rage, you become untouchable. Remember this always. Every time you do not respond, every time you pause, every time you take a breath instead of throwing a stone, you win. Not over them, but over yourself, and that is the only victory that matters. So let them provoke, let them shout, let them misunderstand. Your stillness is your answer. Now let's go even deeper into the sacred art of guarding your intentions, because not all things are meant to be seen, and not all plans are meant to be spoken. What grows in silence grows strong. Part 3. Guarding your intentions like sacred fire. And so, after silence holds firm against provocation, there comes another kind of test. A quieter one, not from the world's attacks, but from its curiosity. Because once they realize they can't shake you, they will try another way. They'll try to read you, to guess your next move, to unravel the mystery you carry within. And that is why your intentions must be guarded. Think of your goal as a sacred flame. You do not build a fire in the open during a storm. You find shelter, you feed it slowly, you protect it with care. A wise man does not speak of every dream he's dreaming, not because he is ashamed of it, but because he knows the world too often spits on sparks it does not understand. And a goal shared too soon is like a seed torn from the soil before it can root. There was once a woman in a small village who was known for growing strange, rare flowers. They bloomed only once a year in the deepest part of the forest. When others asked her how she grew them, she only smiled and said, "Some things must be planted in silence." And indeed, she never showed her garden, never explained the process, never spoke of her methods. But when spring came, the whole village gathered to see the bloom, and they whispered in awe, "How did she do it?" She never answered, because the answer was not in what she said. It was in what she withheld. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not parade their intentions through the marketplace. They didn't announce what they were working toward. They didn't need to. Because when your actions are aligned with your purpose, your life begins to speak for itself. and those who need proof can watch. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about others. It is not what others say or think that matters, but what you choose to do with your own breath. That is the essence of guarding your intention. You do not need the world to clap for a plan still being formed. You do not need applause for something that hasn't even taken root, because validation, when sought too soon, becomes a leash, and suddenly your goal no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the crowd's expectations, so let your dreams remain close to your chest, not because they are fragile, but because they are precious. Let them grow strong in the dark. Let them breathe in silence. Let them become undeniable before they are spoken aloud. There is also power in surprise, in doing what no one expected, in becoming what no one predicted. But you can't surprise them if you've already told them what you plan to do. And more than that, you cannot protect what you constantly expose. Every time you explain your next move, you invite resistance. Not all resistance is loud. Some comes as doubt. Some comes as envy. Some comes as friendly advice that weakens your clarity. And before long, your once solid vision becomes clouded, not because it was wrong, but because it was shared too early. So protect your inner world like a hidden grove. Let only the trustworthy walk there. Let only the worthy hear your true plans. This is not secrecy born of fear. It is discipline born of purpose. A man who knows where he's going does not need to explain every step. He simply walks it, calm, deliberate, focused. And when he arrives, the world understands, not because he announced it, but because he became it. So let them wonder, let them guess. Your silence will confuse some, it will frustrate others, but it will protect your fire. And the longer you guard your intentions, the more powerful their arrival will become. Now, let's keep walking deeper into this quiet strength, into what it means to build in the dark, and let silence speak where noise never could. Part 4. Build in the dark, let silence speak. And so we continue deeper into the quiet path. After you have guarded your intentions like sacred flame, what remains is the work, not the show, not the speech, not the promise, just the slow, steady shaping of your character in silence. There is a kind of strength that only grows in the dark, not because it is hiding, but because it is becoming. Like the roots of an ancient tree, winding and deepening beneath the surface before even one leaf appears. And those who rush to bloom too soon often forget. A flower without roots is easily torn by the wind. The Stoics called it preparation without performance. To work not for the eyes of others, but for the voice within. To sharpen your thoughts, to master your responses, to grow disciplined in moments when no one is watching. Because if you wait to build your strength until you are seen, you are already too late. There once was a young man who disappeared from his village without a word. He left behind a small house, a few debts, and many rumors. Some said he failed, others said he fled. No one really knew. But seasons passed, and the village forgot. Until one evening, years later, a stranger returned. His shoulders were broader. His eyes were still, like a calm lake after storm. He walked into the town square and paid every debt he'd ever owed. He asked for nothing in return. And when someone asked him, "Where have you been?" he replied simply, "Becoming the man I couldn't be when I left." He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He just became. And that is what silence allows you to do. You see, when you are quiet, you create space. Space to reflect. Space to sharpen. Space to listen to what you really want, who you really are. what truly matters. The world will fill that silence with guesses. Let them, because as you build in the dark, your stillness begins to speak for you. It speaks of patience. It speaks of intention. It speaks of power that doesn't rush to prove itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And how do you become that man? You begin alone. You begin in silence. You begin in the hours when the world is asleep and only your thoughts remain awake. You show up for yourself again and again, not because someone is watching, but because you are worth the effort. It is in the quiet hours that greatness is carved. Not with noise, but with choices. Not with performance, but with persistence. And the man who learns to build in the dark doesn't need to announce when he steps into the light. Because when he does, his presence says everything. And here is the deeper truth. If you must constantly tell others who you are, you have not become it yet. But when you are it, truly, you will not need to say a word. Your walk will speak. Your decisions will speak. Your peace will speak. And so, you must be willing to disappear for a while, to walk alone, to grow without witness, to prepare not for applause, but for alignment. Because one day, when the time is right, you will return. Not with noise, but with depth. And they will say, "He changed," but the truth is you simply became. Let them wonder where you went. Let them guess what you're doing. The mystery is not a weakness. It is your cocoon, and when it breaks, you will not have to explain the wings. They will see for themselves. Now come further still, into the next valley, where detachment makes you dangerous, because when you no longer need to be seen, you become someone they can no longer control. Part 5. Detachment makes you dangerous. And so we arrive at a deeper silence, one not just of the mouth, but of the soul. After you've built in the dark, after you've let silence speak for you, there comes a shift, not loud, but unmistakable. You no longer seek to impress. You no longer seek to belong. You no longer need their applause, their understanding, or even their permission. And this is when you become dangerous. Detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. When you detach, it does not mean you stop caring. It means you begin to care correctly. You stop tying your peace to how others treat you. You stop hinging your identity on who notices your effort, who stays, who praises, who leaves. You begin to walk with something far more powerful, self-possession. There was once a shepherd who raised wolves instead of sheep. He trained them gently with patience and care, but he never caged them. He knew their strength was in their freedom. One day, a stranger asked, "Aren't you afraid they'll turn on you?" The shepherd smiled and said, "No, because I never taught them to obey me. I taught them to obey their nature. And they trust me, because I never needed to control them." That's the paradox. The less you try to control others, the less you need their control in return. The Stoics called it indifference to externals. It doesn't mean you're numb. It means you've sorted what truly matters. And what matters most is your character. Not how many followers you gain, not how many people clap for your truth, but whether you can look in the mirror at the end of the day and say, "I kept my soul intact." When you are no longer available for manipulation, you become unreadable. They can't trigger you. They can't guilt you into action. They can't flatter you into weakness. Because you are no longer hungry for validation. You are fed by something else, your values, your vision, your vow to yourself. This is how detachment breeds power. Because when someone cannot be pressured, when they do not need to be liked, when they can walk away from anything that does not align with their peace, others fear to cross them. Not because they are cruel, but because they are clear. Clarity is unnerving in a world addicted to confusion. And most people are not ready for someone who cannot be swayed. They are not ready for someone who can sit in a room and say nothing, yet be the most present one there. They are not ready for someone who can walk away from drama, from temptation, from praise, without leaving a trace. But the Stoic is ready, because he has already walked away from something much harder, his own need to be needed. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." And what lies beyond your control? The opinions of others, the reactions of others, the loyalty of others. So why stake your peace on sand? When you detach, you stop begging the world to give you back your worth. You stop chasing what was never yours to begin with. You stop gripping things that only hurt you because you were afraid to let them fall. And here's what no one tells you. When you finally let go, you rise. Not because you became better than them, but because you remembered who you were before they told you who to be. So let them misread your silence. Let them call it pride. Let them call it arrogance. Let them say you've changed. What they cannot see is that you have returned to yourself. And the man who no longer needs their stage, who no longer plays the game, who no longer explains himself to be understood, is the man they can't control. That man is free, and that kind of freedom is the rarest power of all. So now, let's go even deeper into that quiet power, into what it means to not just resist reaction, but to wield emotional control like an invisible sword. Because a man who masters himself can never be mastered. Part 6. Emotional control is your invisible sword. And now, having walked through detachment, the place where no one owns your peace but you, we arrive at one of the rarest skills of all, self-mastery. Not over the world, not over others, but over your own storm within. Emotional control is not suppression, it is transformation. It is not denying your feelings. It is not pretending they're not there. It is holding them in your hands like a blacksmith with molten iron, turning heat into strength, fury into form. A man once lived on the edge of the kingdom, known for his discipline. No one ever saw him lose his temper, even when cheated at the market, even when insulted in the public square. One day, a soldier passing through spat at his feet and sneered, "What kind of man doesn't defend his pride?" The man looked at him, calm as a stone in still water, and said, "I defend it by not giving it away." That is what the Stoics understood. Power is not in the fire, but in the one who holds it steady. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire. He commanded armies, bore the weight of plague, betrayal, and loss, but he wrote not of vengeance, not of anger, but of governing the self before governing the world. He said, "You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. Because the moment you need to react, you are no longer choosing, you are being ruled. And make no mistake, many will try to rule you through your reactions. They'll test your pride, they'll pull at your fears, they'll speak in tones that make your blood rise. Why? Because they know if they can make you emotional, they can make you predictable. But a Stoic is not predictable. He is deliberate. Emotions are not enemies, they are signals. But they are not kings. You feel anger? Good. Let it teach you where your boundary is. But do not lash out. Let it steady your hand, not swing your sword. You feel fear? Good. Let it sharpen your awareness. But do not shrink. Let it remind you to prepare, not to run. Emotional control means responding, not reacting. It means pausing when the world wants you to explode. It means breathing when your chest tightens. It means asking yourself, what will this action cost me? And is this who I want to become? The man who rules his emotion rules his fate. Because the storm will always come, but you are not the storm. You are the one who decides whether to open the gates. There is a quiet dignity in holding yourself back, not out of fear, but out of strength. Because the truth is, anyone can shout, anyone can curse, anyone can throw stones when they feel slighted. But to sit still, to speak only when your words are clean, not poisoned, to let the fire pass through you and not be burned, that is rare. The Stoics taught that anger burns the one who holds it, that grief, if fed too long, becomes chains. That joy, if made dependent on others, turns to dust when they leave. So they built their joy inward. They anchored their peace to something no one could steal. And so must you, because the world will not stop testing you, but each test is a chance, a doorway to become the kind of man who does not need to fight to prove his power, who does not need to explain to prove his worth, who walks away, not in defeat, but in dominion. Imagine your emotions as wild horses, raw, beautiful, dangerous. Most men are dragged by them. But you learn to ride, not to break the horse, but to move as one. That is emotional control. Not silence for silence's sake, but silence as strategy, as calm, as wisdom. So when they come to provoke, to pull, to press, you will not rise in rage. You will simply remain. And they will feel it, even if they never understand it. Now let's go on, into a place where silence becomes absence. And even your leaving speaks volumes. Part 7. Your absence will echo louder than your words. And after you've mastered the storm within, after you've chosen stillness over reaction, presence over noise, there is one more kind of power that silence grants you. The power not just to be quiet, but to withdraw. Not in defeat, but in declaration. Because sometimes the loudest thing you'll ever say is your absence. There is an old tale of a falconer and his bird. He trained the falcon from its youth, fed it, spoke to it gently, but he never chained it. Every morning the falcon returned to him from the open skies. Until one day it didn't. The villagers mocked the man. "You should have caged it," they said. "Now it's gone." But the falconer smiled. "No," he said. "Now they will understand what it meant when it stayed. This is the echo of your absence. You do not shout, you do not slam the door. You simply step away from chaos, from disrespect, from anything that dishonors your peace. And in the quiet you leave behind, people hear something they could never hear when you were near: your worth. The Stoics did not cling. They did not stay in places that no longer nourished the soul. They understood that space, when chosen with dignity, is not abandonment, but elevation. When you are no longer everywhere, they begin to notice where you once stood. When you are no longer quick to reply, they begin to replay what you last said. When your energy no longer surrounds them, they begin to feel the chill of its absence. And that is not bitterness, that is boundary. Because you teach people how to value you, not by how loudly you speak, but by how quietly you walk away. There is a kind of leaving that says more than years of explanation ever could, a kind of silence that does not punish but reveals. Seneca wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving." And if neither applies, he did not say to hate them. He said to leave them, to step back from the table where your soul is not fed, to stop knocking on doors that only open to take, but never to give. Your presence is not common, it is a gift. And when you begin to see it that way, you no longer spend it recklessly. You don't chase closure. You don't demand understanding. You don't need to be proven right. You simply remove the energy and let time do the rest. This is not abandonment. This is alignment. And those who never truly saw you will feel you more in your absence than they ever did in your presence, because they mistook your quiet for weakness, your calm for compliance, your forgiveness for forgetfulness. But when you walk away, on your own terms in your own time, there is nothing louder. Absence becomes your armor, not a wall to hide behind, but a shield to protect your peace. And when you learn that silence can walk with you, even when you leave, you begin to understand just how powerful stillness really is. There is no need to explain why you left. Those who were meant to understand already knew, and those who didn't, no amount of words would have made them see. Let your life move like water, clear, quiet, unstoppable. Let your energy flow where it is respected. Let your time be spent where it is treasured. And let your leaving be a lesson, not in revenge, but in reverence. Now come. There is one more step still, one final layer of the silent man. What happens when no one can understand you and you choose not to explain? That is the final mystery and the truest power. Part 8. Let them try to understand you and fail. So we arrive at the final gate. You've chosen presence over performance. You've guarded your fire. You've endured provocation without flinching, built in silence, detached with grace, mastered your emotions, and walked away without a word. And now comes the most mysterious power of all, to be unknowable, yet unforgettable. Let them try to understand you. Let them fail, not because you are a riddle, but because you've stopped explaining a language they were never ready to speak. Because when your soul is deep, those who only know shallow waters will never see the bottom. There was once a man who spoke in rivers. He never answered directly. When asked about his past, he smiled. When asked about his dreams, he looked to the sky. People said he was strange, perhaps even arrogant. But years later, long after he had gone, they still gathered at the bank of the river, trying to remember his words, trying to feel again what they felt when he was near. He had said so little, and yet somehow he had said everything. You do not need to be understood to be powerful. In fact, your mystery may be your final defense, your last freedom, because the moment you explain yourself to someone unwilling to understand, you give away a piece of your soul, and the soul was never made to be bargained. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. He did not say the rock must explain itself. It simply stands. In a world obsessed with visibility, the unseen becomes sacred. They will watch you and wonder, why doesn't he argue back? Why doesn't he need to be liked? Why doesn't he defend his name? They'll create stories to fill the silence. And every guess will fall short, because they are looking for surface answers to a depth they've never known. Your stillness is not just silence. It is a boundary. It is a signal to the world. I am not here to perform for your comfort. I am not here to shrink so you can feel tall. I am not here to be explained. I am here to be. And in this final lesson, the Stoics give us their rarest gift, the power of being at peace with not being understood. Because once you no longer seek to be understood, you are free to be true. You do not water down your thoughts. You do not round off your edges. You do not decorate your convictions just to make them palatable. You live fully in your truth, not loudly, but entirely. And those who can meet you there will. Not all will. Not many will, but those who do will meet the real you. So let the world guess. Let them write stories in their heads. You are not required to edit their imaginations. You owe no one a performance. And you owe yourself the peace of being whole in private, Because power, real power, isn't in being known by many. It is in being deeply known by a few. And most importantly, being known by yourself. So say less. Let your choices speak. Let your presence speak. Let your silence speak. And when they lean in closer, hoping to finally get you, smile. Let them sit with the echo of a mystery they were never meant to solve, because you are not a puzzle. You are a flame. And not all hands are meant to hold fire. Now come, we've walked the full circle. The silent man has risen. And those who once doubted him now stand shaken in his quiet, the power that needs no words. So now you know, silence was never emptiness. It was strategy, it was substance, it was the space where power sharpened itself, unseen. You've walked through presence, provocation, detachment, and emotional mastery. You've learned that your value is not in how loudly you speak, but in how deeply you carry yourself when you don't. And that's what Stoicism offers you, not a mask, but a mirror. Not a script to perform, but a foundation to stand on, even when the world tries to shake you. So when the noise around you rises again, when they push, when they prod, when they demand you explain, remember this. You don't need to react. You don't need to reveal. You don't need to respond. You only need to remain still, steady, certain, because the one who doesn't speak but still commands the room is the one who's already won, and now that can be you. If this message stirred something in you, if it reminded you of the quiet strength inside, then this is the place for you. Subscribe to the Stoic Philosophy, not because we shout the loudest, but because we listen the deepest. Watch more of our videos if you want to walk taller, speak less, and live with quiet fire. We're building a brotherhood of calm strength, and you, yes, you, are meant to be part of it. Until next time, be silent, be still, be unshakable.